That's right, everybody. The cavalry is coming, and they are coming for Luke Kennard, signed by the Memphis Grizzlies yesterday to a one-year, $11 million deal. We'll tell you why that's good news, why we thought it would be coming, and how it relates to what the Grizzlies can do for this season. We've also got a little bit of Memphis Tigers women's basketball to talk with you on this episode of Typhoon Streams. I'm your host, Tyler Springs. Thank you very much for joining us, and if you like what we're doing here, please spread it around, throw a like in, subscribe, and like the social media posts as well. We appreciate all that because we know how hard it is to get off the ground for a streaming channel, and we are doing that right now. So definitely feeling it. Luke Kennard and the Memphis Grizzlies reunite. They were separated ever so briefly for 1 year and $11 million. The Grizzlies, I think, from the start, were certainly expecting for this to be the case, that Kennard would re-sign with them, because I think they felt like it was a good situation for both parties. That's why they declined the option they had to pick up for about $14 million and change to renegotiate for a 1 year, $11 million deal. Now, the way this deal is being talked about, there are some obvious elements to it. Obviously, you'd like to keep the best shooter in the NBA by percentage on your team in order to space the floor, especially for a penetrator like Ja Morant, right? That's the kind of thing that you desperately need, and this city has been wanting for shooting for such a long time, and I think people are very excited to have an extended run, hopefully, knock on wood, with both Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard available on your wings, although they might not play in the same rotations per se. That being said, should spread the floor, should open things up for Ja Morant. I had told you earlier this summer, and I'm probably not the only one who told you this, but I had told you I was bullish on what the Grizzlies had done in terms of building depth on the wings, and I spoke honestly a little bit more to the younger pieces rather than to the elder pieces, like the Vince Williams, the G.G. Jacksons, young as they are. They've got more reps than do some of the other Grizzlies, like a Jalen Wells or a Cam Spencer, right? I'm still of the belief that Cam Spencer measures up very well against Luke Kennard in terms of the profile of the two players both coming out of college. I'm not saying Cam Spencer is going to turn into Luke Kennard tomorrow, but I do feel like they profile very similarly, and I think Spencer maybe a smidge smaller, but actually adds a little bit in terms of playmaking ability and in terms of defensive prowess, not necessarily from a size standpoint, but more from an activity and an intensity standpoint. He is, I feel, pesky in a way that you don't necessarily see from Luke Kennard, which is not a shade to Luke Kennard's defense. I think he just knows where his bread is buttered, right? But I think probably next year, not this year, but next year, Cam Spencer turns into a 15-man roster piece for this Grizzlies team. And I think that is in part happening because of what is going to be the eventual departure of Luke Kennard. I didn't think that they could probably afford to keep him long term, and they're not doing that. And he is valuing, more importantly, the mobility provided by agreeing to a deal like this. Probably could have gone anywhere between the $10 million to like $18 million range here, but taking the $11 million helps set up the Grizzlies and Kennard for movement at the trade deadline, because if you combine him with a Marcus Smart, you could package that pair, for something in the neighborhood of $31 million. And I think the Grizzlies are right to look at players of that level in terms of their pedigree to see who can be a contributor for a team that hopes to be contending. I think one of the wrinkles here that people are not really talking about that much is, what if Kennard's really, really good? I mean, what if he's the guy that they absolutely cannot live without down the backstretch of the season? How do you go about getting a different piece that you might need more than the shooting element if Kennard is the floor stretcher that you hope that he is? I recognize the volume is not always incredibly high, but over the course of the last couple of years, him being the highest percentage shooter in the NBA bodes well for Ja Morant and bodes well for the Grizzlies offense with Taylor Jenkins. I think you're just counting on the fact that you have the opportunity to move him at the deadline, not only because he's doing well, but because the Grizzlies kind of want to leapfrog and trampoline off of him into a bigger piece, right? I think he could play incredibly well Maybe they decide they want to keep him because that's just how valuable he's become. It has not been incredibly available over the last couple of years, but I think I would be inclined to say the Grizzlies believe that they can get something more if they trade a package that includes Kennard and Marcus Smart for the quote unquote big name, big dollar guy that they've been hoping for such a long time. So they are certainly building the wing depth and the shooting depth in relief of Kennard in preparation for his departure, assuming that things go well, or at least well enough that they can ship him off to somewhere to get a piece back that would help them contend in the Western Conference playoffs and the backstretch next year. That includes adding a Cam Spencer, a Jalen Wells, developing G.G. Jackson, developing Vince Williams, not to mention the continued development of Desmond Bane. We'll see what else you can get from Scottie Pippen Jr., at some point. We believe those pieces are all in the fold for the Grizzlies' future, which is not to say they need to be bereft of veterans. I think they're going to be very choosy when they get the chance to be, and hopefully Kennard and Marcus Smart can be exchanged for somebody else who is a more veteran-proven scorer and dynamic piece, and that is the hope, I think, come February. I don't think Kennard can be traded until after December 15th, but I think they are hoping that come January, he will be the one that benefits, because taking a smaller deal and valuing his own mobility, it's not just the belief that I want to take a hometown discount, kind of thing, and play for a contender. It is, I know that whether I'm here or not, I want to be available to someone, and that may get me even more paid if I get shipped out here on an expiring contract to another team that could potentially be contending somewhere else in the league. So good on the Grizzlies, good on Luke Kennard for coming together, for getting this deal done, and I certainly think it sets up both teams well for the future. And I'm glad to see that you feel a little bit validated when you feel like, all right, some of the things that you're reading here and things that you're thinking in your own mind, all right, does this match up with what the team is going to do? And I think the answer is yes. I'll give credit to Parker VB901 on Twitter. He was one of the guys who was kind of leading the charge on, at least where I saw it, the $31 million combination of Smart and Kennard in a potential trade package, and guys who kind of were valued at that level in the NBA. And we'll see what that nets the Grizzlies. So we'll have to find out. But for now, it sets up well, at least for the early season. You obviously need some injury luck. But that is it's a good setup for the Grizzlies and for John Morant's success, and for the Grizzlies to potentially make a move at the trade deadline. So we'll just have to see what all unfolds there. But it's getting spicy. It's getting really interesting there. Let me switch gears from Memphis Grizzlies basketball to Memphis Tigers women's basketball. They, of course, this week had the open practice that kind of concludes their summer training session, and I liked a lot of what I saw. They played for about an hour 10, an hour 20 in El Marone Fieldhouse to kind of conclude that summer portion. And I don't know what it will look like in November. I think it's very hard for any team to know what it will look like in November. I would say they look pretty good. They didn't look amazing. They didn't blow me away. Certain players popped. Other players, I think you're still waiting to see what they bring to the table. But in general, I thought Alex Simmons' squad looked like they were moving the ball well, and I think they did one thing in particular that I think that they kind of draw on professionals in this sense. They moved the ball to an open player. Right? They kind of found where the advantage was in this scrimmage that they had, and they more often than not were able to find a player who had either an edge or an open look, and they got that player the ball, and typically that player would score. And I think that's one thing they were missing a little bit last year. Not that they were the most assist-oriented team. That's not really, I think, the point of the offense that Alex Simmons runs. But I do think they wanted to, seize on moments, right? Take advantage of opportunities. And I felt like they did that. And they moved the ball to open players with easy looks in the scrimmage. And you want to see more of that, during the regular season, whether that's post-entry or high-low. I thought you saw a good bit of it in that scrimmage. Guard play-wise, you're obviously losing Madison Griggs. Hard player to replace. Interesting to see what that backcourt looks like. It'll either be Tanya Welch or Destiny Jackson at the point guard spot. I thought each looked pretty confident in terms of what they were doing on Tuesday. Destiny, obviously, having an abundance of confidence. Fifth-year player should be that way, right? Not afraid to shoot, not afraid to get ahead of steam, and not afraid to make a quick decision with a basketball when asked. And Tanyelle, coming off of an injury that kept her out last year, I think showed the same quickness that she had pre-injury, which was great to see. And both of them, she and Destiny, I think were willing passers. So I'm really interested to see how the point guard battle kind of breaks down there and to see who gets the lead. Tan was having a great summer last year before suffering the injury, and certainly hopeful for her future as a Tiger, because she's still got some years left after this, that she will kind of ascend into a lead guard role, if not alone in the starting lineup herself this year, certainly by next year. But you feel like playing sparingly as a freshman. I don't know if I'd say sparingly, I guess, but playing as a reserve as a freshman 2 years ago for Katrina Merriweather, Tan showed flashes. So certainly excited for her continued development for the Memphis backcourt, and it'll be needed in terms of playmaking and distribution as well. In terms of what you get on the wings, part of what you saw was additions from the transfer portal, and that includes Tilly Bowler from Jackson State. That includes Alana Eaton from Ole Miss. Those two players in particular, obviously more experienced. They've been on the college level for a while. Bowler, last 2 years at Jackson State, 12 points per game. Not necessarily a knockdown three-point threat, but certainly someone who will get to the basket and the free throw line, and that is a big hope for Alex Simmons' offense in terms of improving this year. They kind of missed that last year. They didn't really have a surefire penetrator who could go to the hole and get fouled or get to the rim, with abandon, and I think that hurt the offense overall. Not to simplify things, but Alex Simmons' offense, and I think the general game plan for her teams has been get to the free throw line, force turnovers, play at a high pace, and then kind of see how everything else shakes out. But you also want to defend the three-point line well. Those were kind of the four tenets of what this team has looked like for her when it's worked, and I feel like they're trying to lean into certainly that frequency at the free throw line, if you will, a little bit more this season with the addition of somebody like Tilly Bowler, who looked good, I thought, and actually did more defensively than I think she'd been asked to do at Jackson State previously. So that was fun to see. Alana Eaton, somebody who's had her college career, a little bit marred by injury, certainly in the early going, and has not quite fulfilled the potential of a top 50 prospect the way she once was. Still has, the sort of in the phone booth quickness, and still can get off a shot very quickly, and it will go down. So we saw a little bit of that in practice, and we saw her willingness to pass as well. I thought that was good to see, in case she plays, heavy reserve minutes off the bench and is able to stretch the floor, not necessarily in the way that Madison Griggs will, but in a similar fashion. That would certainly help, especially in complementing a driver like a Tilly Bowler or a Tanyelle Welch. So we'll see what Eaton can bring to the fray from the wing in that standpoint. Tamaya Smith, big wing, 6'2" or so from Alabama, just a freshman, ran the floor well, showed good length. Don't know how much playing time she's going to get this season, but certainly looking forward to her continued development and glad to see a number of hustle plays made in the open practice. You also have to take into consideration the fact that they want to play Alasia Smith out in the perimeter a little bit more this year. Alasia was a willing three-point shooter last year, maybe not necessarily a dangerous one, but she looks bigger and faster somehow. So those are great things to see in summer about one of your best players from last season, who was, I think, made a great case for Conference Defensive Player of the Year. But she hopefully will be able to step out a little bit more toward the perimeter, not only guarding out there, but also playing offensively out there as her shot develops. I think Hannah Riddick continues to be an offensively ascending piece. You got a couple of 20-point games from her last year. She has, I believe, the stated goal for her has been to get her range out of three-point land. Didn't see a lot of that last year, but even, getting to 15 feet, knocking down, baseline jumpers, facing the basket has been Something that I think people wanted to see from her game, and something that she can expand upon. But she looked quick. She still has the trademark length, but she looked like her first step was very quick, getting in the basket, and her motor was as good as I've seen. So that also, those two players, I think, having been standouts on last year's team, would be huge offensive pieces for them to be able to put the ball in their hands frequently this season. And I think Hannah actually, both of them, but Hannah in particular, I thought the handles looked pretty good as well. Looked like they had polished them a little bit. And you love seeing that, right? Those are your veteran leaders, and you want to see more of that for sure. Post-wise, look, it's still a concern, I think, because you got a lot of unproven talent there. Last year was kind of the same. It was a mix and match. And I would say you're not necessarily deeper in the post this year than you were last season. You do have Quinn Fulmore coming in from Towson, who was active on the glass in the open practice. And I think they'll be counting on her for that during the season as well. Plays with a solid motor, not afraid of contact, and we'll see. I think she did a little more defensively as well than she'd been asked to do at Towson. Not afraid to get hands in there for deflections and the like. So we'll be interested to see how Fulmore plays, sort of that 5 role for Memphis, and to see whether they play kind of 4 out or kind of 4 around 1, if you will, with Fulmore there as the lone post, the lone true post. In the middle, but she'll get, I think, a lot of time. Probably, right now, I would say, the leader in the clubhouse to start at center to begin the year. We'll see how they play Riddick and Alasia Smith around her. You might get Lakin Cox in a reserve role off the bench. You might get a little bit of Tasia Williamson as well there, or Bailey Gilmore, but Gilmore coming over from Vanderbilt where she redshirted. This is her first college season of really playing, so. Great to get your feet wet as a freshman as a redshirt, but even better to get, some live reps, if you will. So hopefully her growth is going to go in a good direction. Additionally, also, I'm trying to think of the other ones that I missed. Raven Sims handled the ball more than I thought she would. That looks like that's an increase there where there's a little more trust in Raven. Last year played a lot off the ball. Still working on that shot, but I thought her decision making was good, and I thought she handled the ball more and better for someone who is a second-year player in the program than what we saw from her last season. So I think that's a positive sign as well for the Memphis Tigers and for their lone Memphian right now on the roster. So lots of good stuff for the Tigers at that open practice. I think it's still not a finished product yet. They've got a lot of time to kind of mold and shift and consider things. But we'll see what the American Athletic Conference looks like this year. I've taken some glances at it in terms of trying to compare and contrast, who's gotten what and who's scheduled for what, that kind of thing. But, Memphis certainly played a brutal non-conference slate last year. I'm not sure that they've dialed it back at all this year with Louisville and Tennessee at home in late December. They probably got a return game coming somewhere at Mississippi State, I would guess earlier in the season, according to what Alex said in her press remarks afterward. And there's probably somewhere in there return trips to Southern Miss and Troy from those home games last year. So we'll see what else is on the docket. But that is certainly a slice of the games that we're expecting this year for the Tigers. And those are not easy trips for sure, and they'll be hard pressed to win down in Hattiesburg, down in Starkville, down in Troy. So we'll see how they do. But unfortunately, I think for Tigers fans, when you look at the American Athletic Conference slate, I guess maybe unfortunately is the wrong word, but the reality you're gonna have to accept, and I think the sooner you accept it, the better, is the AAC did you no favors in terms of scheduling, right? You look at the AAC matchup breakdown. We don't even have the dates yet, but Memphis is going to play 9 games this year against American teams that won at least 10 games in league play last season, and that is more than any other team in the American. So you've got a road-only matchup with South Florida. That's going to be tough. I believe you got a road-only matchup with Rice, who's the defending tournament champion. That's a veteran team. That's going to be tough. UAB has reloaded. UTSA has added, and they're going to get Jordan Jenkins for the whole year. North Texas, obviously, a force to be contended with. And I think Temple as well, a team that's going to sustain itself despite, the losses they suffered with no longer having Aaliyah Nelson. They added some from the portal, and they are building on a strong young core from last year. So you've got your hands full. I don't know where Memphis yet is going to finish in the American. I'm going to give you a full American Athletic Conference preview here, before the season gets going. But I'm definitely looking at the American and saying, that conference slate is not easy for the Tigers. So Alex Simmons and company are going to have their hands full, and we'll hope that they have gelled by the time that conference play rolls around, and in that light can do some damage against their fellow league competitors. If you like what I've done here, please like, subscribe, just share this around. I'm not yet in a spot where I can ask for money or be on a Patreon, but I am trying to get just a little more awareness out for this channel and for my content. So I hope you like my perspective, and please shoot me an email. The info's there in the comment section, and you can interact with me on Twitter as well if you like what I'm doing here. But I appreciate you tuning in tonight, and looking forward to giving you more coverage of all kinds in the future. Hopefully it's going to be a lot on Memphis, obviously the Grizzlies, the Tigers, and the UFL's Memphis Showboats. Additionally, going to spend some time college football, UFL, NFL, and a little bit of college basketball, some NBA. But I also want to make sure that I hit the WNBA and women's college basketball, because I think that is a sport that's on the rise and deserves your attention. So you'll find that here on this channel. I don't know if you'll find it on other channels for Memphis sportscasters, but you'll find it on mine from time to time. And I hope you enjoy that and give it a chance, because I think that is a rising sport, and you'll be glad that once you get into it, as I have, to even to a small degree, just taking small bites. It's cool. It's fun, and you'll order it again. So I'm Tyler Springs. Thanks so much for tuning in this evening, and until next time, do your best, get some rest, and the Grizzlies and the Tigers will too.